Your voice with the N.R.P. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the N.R.P. candidates as they amplify your voice.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Stevenson Manners, host of your brand new program, Your Voice with the N.R.P. We're here every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Last week we got off to a good start with the leader of the N.R.P., Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, and Cleone, the Honorable Cleone Stapleton Simmons. Tonight it promises to get even better. Now on this program, we don't do monologues, we don't give lectures, we don't do political diatribe, but we encourage you to come in, air your views. It's where the leaders of the Nevis Reformation Party come to speak with you, and they expect to hear from you. So welcome one and all, and I can promise you that tonight we're going to open the lines very early because we want to hear from you. We are very interested in dialogue. We want to hear what is impacting your lives and your livelihoods, and we want to hear what you would like to see. We definitely would like to give you hope for the future. With us tonight, on my far right, the representative of the N.R.P. for the parish of St. John's, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening, Steve. Or can I call you Steve?
Well, that's my name.
Mr. Manners. Good evening, Mr. Manners. Let me be respectful.
It's so good to see you tonight.
It's good to be here. Finally, I've made my way on the big stage. I know last week I had to call in, but tonight it's a pleasure really to be with you in studio tonight. And I would just like to say good evening to all those who are logged in or tuned in or logged on and tuned in at this point in time. And it's a pleasure to have you in our company.
Yes, and we've also got on the big stage, Big Rohan Alves. Good evening to you, Rohan.
Good evening, Mr. Manners. Good evening, Pat. It's good to be here, Steve. Last week I missed the opportunity to call in, as my colleague said she would have done, but it's an honor to be here on Your Voice at the N.R.P.
Yes, definitely, it's going to be a big one. And what have you been hearing on the road ever since we launched last week, Doc?
Well, I've been hearing good reviews, actually. I don't know, you said it promises to be better than last week, and I hope I'm going to try. But I know Rohan could hold his own, and he could do for both of us, really. But what I've been getting from the general public are just good reviews up to this point. Maybe they're just being kind to me. I hope that they were being genuine. But the reviews have been very good.
What have you been hearing, Rohan?
Same. For quite a while, people have been asking why the N.R.P. isn't on Vaughan Radio, considering the fact that Vaughan has such a wide reach in the Division public, and so it's a breath of fresh air. The N.R.P. supporters and followers, and the CCM supporters and followers as well, because if I can switch over to speak of which launched before this one, you get from both sides that people are listening, and so it is good that we are here, and I think we have a wonderful platform, Your Voice, and fundamentally that is what our campaign is centered around: listening to the constituents of our constituencies, giving them a voice to be heard.
Can I just add to what Rohan was saying about being on Vaughan? It is very important, because I keep telling people, and I don't know if this analogy would be fitting, but I've always said it doesn't make any sense for somebody to curse you in tongue and you go gingerland to answer them. You have to answer them in tongue because they try to embarrass you in tongue. It doesn't make any sense to go gingerland, go tell gingerland people all that happened, and that is what has been happening. When N.R.P. is being attacked on Vaughan, they go on some other radio station and answers. So the audience who would have heard the attack does not hear the rebuttal on the other side. And so I think the balance, it is good for balance. It is good for the general public that they get a balance, view of what is going on, not just one side.
And even before you've made your debut appearance here, I was totally blown away last Tuesday evening on the Let's Talk show. You were making some very solid points. When someone called in, you clearly got under their skin to rebut. And he started by saying, I don't normally do this. That person has a show on a Wednesday evening, but they couldn't wait. You're shaking up the ants nest very, very early. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was rather interesting, and I was trying to suggest in my own way, because I think sometimes I try to be a little diplomatic, and I was trying to suggest, let me call him tomorrow night, trying to suggest, really, it's not fair. We have a little time here, because I'm just getting a little slice, on a Tuesday night, just a small little slice, and then he calls in, and obviously it was meant to, well, let me not say obviously, but to me, it seemed as if he just okay, stop the argument right here, let me talk. And this, as the Americans would call in their parliament, well, similar to what we call a parliament, they would call it a filibuster, someone just gets up and just talk and talk and talk and talk until the time runs down. And then at the end of it, it leaves the other person frustrated because you don't get a chance, to rebut. And so I thought, that it was well choreographed. I'm not saying it was planned from here, but at the end of the day, he had the final say on that night. But I said, wait, at least we have Monday. And here we are. Well, Monday indeed.
Here you are, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. The platform is yours. What have you got for us tonight?
Well, just to continue the discussion, because I don't think that I got a fair chance, of delving into all the details as it relates to what was put on the table. And for the benefit of the audience, the listening or viewing audience, who may not have been privy to that conversation that we had last Tuesday on Let's Talk, it was really centered around and people were calling it an allegation before, but the Prime Minister had published something accounting for some $371 million with dollars that he would have sent to Nevis over a period of about 7 years. And the people of Nevis really didn't feel the impact of it. And I raised the question, well, what, of this 371 million, could we get an account for it? And of course, the Premier called in and he just talked and talked and talked. But you and I know that when you're accounting, you start talk figures. But strangely enough, he called to give an account, but he wasn't talking figures, And so I said, it's not fair. We can't give people half of the story. And so I went and I researched. Mind you, I would have had the information stored because I thought at some point we would have to discuss this because it is relevant to what is going on in Nevis. We can't have so much poverty in Nevis, receiving all this money and still have poverty increasing, and still have many people out of work, and people can't live in dignity because some people are going to bed hungry. That ought not happen, not in Nevis when we have so much money to squander. I don't know if Rohan want to chime in here so that I could kind of get the figures that the Prime Minister had sent over.
Well,
in the meantime,
we'll give Rohan a chance to come in as well, but one of the things I noted is that he tried to flip the script. I don't think anybody in this room or anybody listening on radio, watching on Facebook or on YouTube would deny the fact that Nevis should be getting a fair share. We are not sure what a fair share is, but there is a document called the Charlestown Accord in which he claimed, he wrote himself, and he claimed that it is the first time in the history of St. Kitts Nevis, I have the exact quote here, never before has any St. Kitts-based party or leader made such public commitments to the people of Nevis. So there was unity, and coming with that was supposed to be some money to Nevis. And as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. But he tried to flip the script by saying what we should be talking about is how much St. Kitts get. But we were told that the road to Church Street leads to St. John's, leads to Charlestown, all three for we, so we could go past here to see what's in the pot, what's on the stove, so that when it's being shared, we know what is a fair share. But he's now telling divisions and the N.R.P. that the argument you should be making is how much St. Kitts get. He should be telling us that because he's the accounting officer. Chief accounting officer.
Three of them are in Basel. They should know how much is being lifting Basti out of the total amount, but that's just a deflection.
A deflection, so that he cannot account. And as Pat, you said last week, the maths don't add up.
No, the maths can't add up. And as you said, he's trying to deflect. I remember when we were growing up, my mother used to say, there's this thing they call "Good morning, Peter, cabbage man." I think most individuals know about that, and I think that was his case. You say one thing and he tried to deflect to talk about something else because he wants to sell, something different. But when the Prime Minister said that he sent over $260 million in budgetary transfers to Nevis, to the NIA, that included salaries. Now, we're still hearing that we are borrowing to pay salaries. And maybe justifiably so, we have to borrow, well, not that we have to borrow, but we have to find the additional monies to pay the salaries. The Prime Minister also said that apart from that $260 million, he sent over $50 million to pay, well, he didn't necessarily send it over for them to get their hands on, but what he did was, in kind, he paid for a lot of different things like Nevis participation and special mortgage facilities and the students who go abroad, the economic costs, and those kind of things that added up to about in excess, he said, of 50 million. And then you still had the SIDF monies that were sent, and that would just the same building that he would have referred to, the Treasury building, the pretty building downtown, and the Monday track, the Alexander Hospital, which for some reason can't get finished. Those are the kind of things that we actually see on the ground that he said he would have sent the additional $61 million for. Mind you, all what I just called out, they didn't add up to the 61 million yet. So we still have some accounting to do. So I looked at the figures a little closer. So when the Prime Minister said that he sent $35 million per year, an average, because for the $250 million that he sent over the 7-year period of time, when on an average he sent $35 million a year. So for the 7 years, let's put all of the $35 million that he sent to salaries. So that is half of the salary budget. Okay, so the NIA, they claim that the salaries bill is about $6 million. $6 million per month. So we're considering this is matching funds. So they put 35, the central government put 35 over the 7 years period. The revenue for the 7 years, when you add up the revenues from budget to budget to budget from 2015 up to this point, we would have already collected over $901,700,000. This is an addition, mind you, to what the Prime Minister sent. So we already can't account for this $371 million that the Prime Minister sent. And you're telling me that the NIA in revenue would have collected almost $1 billion up to this point since 2015. We're still wondering where the money gone. Because if you were to take out the $252 million, which is the matching fund, from that $900 million, it leaves us $649,700,000 of the revenues, and all of that was spent. All of that was spent. And I'm like, where? Because if you claim the majority or the bulk of the money that you have to pay goes toward the salaries, that is already taken care of. You have in excess of $500 million, in excess of $1 billion, $500 million for that 7 year, and you spend all of that. And to compound it, Mr. Manners, to compound it, to add what my grandmother used to say, to add insult to injury, we still went to borrow. And so we're now in a position where we're at the end, well, not at the end, but last year budget, and when they made the budget presentation, they said that the debt at that point was $481.54 million with an M dollars, and that was in October. That was not the end of the year yet, that was in October. So good sense would suggest that by the end of last year, 2020, we would have already broken the 500 million, which is $500 million in debt. So add that to the $649 million plus dollars that we already collected in revenues over that period of time, and tell me where in Nevis has this money been spent? Tell me where. And I'm looking around, because when I look around, the only industry I see that seemed to be thriving, which was created by, it seems like created by this present NIA, is a backhoe and truck industry. And it seems almost as if it's an exclusive club that only some people get to join. That is the only place I seem to be making money, outside of the funeral homes, of course. So we still have to continue to ask the question, if you cannot account for $371 million with this boot and bat and, you know, how now are you going to tell Nevisians that they need to band their belly and give them all that kind of lecture about saving something for a rainy day, when the NIA has been so irresponsible?
You're suggesting we don't have a rainy day fund?
Well, it seems as if we're spending everything plus some, because we're not only spending the revenues that we collect. We're not only spending the monies that are sent over from syndicates, monies from the SIDF, different sources. We are borrowing. So if you're, I just understand.
But he said he's been giving you roads, which are as smooth as a baby's bottom. The road to Brown Hill and different ones. He said that last week.
The roads might be that smooth, but how much are they worth? They don't account for $649 plus million over the 7-year period.
So you're suggesting that the government has been fiscally reckless? Reckless.
I'm not the only one. I'm hearing that. Nevisians are upset because at the end of the day, these guys lose next year. They walk away from it. They have no responsibility for paying it. Government, we are the ones who are going to have to make the sacrifices to pay for this, and we are not all benefiting equally. That is the unfortunate thing, because you have some people in the society who are doing well under this administration, and then the majority of people seem just to be hanging on by a thread. Can't make a decent living, you know, in the island of your birth. I mean, it is just upsetting. You know, we have to be more responsible. We have to take things seriously as it relates to the lives and the livelihood of our people. We can't be spending so recklessly, and then we still have things that really are important things that are not being looked after.
Now, I think one of the panelists last week, and I'm talking about the program in which the Premier called in to rebut you, suggested that over the years of this administration, they have not focused on projects which have a multiplier effect on our country. And I was shocked when he responded by saying to an accusation about the Mondo track, that's not the purpose. Our children were running on Grove Park on grass and dirt, and so we gave them that. But when there were drones flying over that place in 2016 and 2017, they were telling the nation that we have the best track in the region. It had 9 lanes, and part of it was trying to attract athletes from winter climes who would come down here and use the facility. I don't know who would come to a facility which don't have changing facilities, which don't have locker rooms, etc. And I'll tell you, I did some research today. St. Vincent and the Grenadines under Ralph Gonzal has built an athletic track, opened on the 4th of November 2020. It has reached to a similar stage to our Mondo track here, which we are told cost 11 million plus. They brought theirs to that position for 6 million. And they've earmarked another 4.75 million to put in the stands, to put in storage facilities, locker facilities, and to buy equipment. We are told that to finish this Mondo track, which mightn't happen in the next 5 years, it's going to cost another $10 million. So SVG, population 110,000 people, will be building a track and stadium for approximately 11 million. We have already spent $11 million. We are earmarked to spend another 10, which would make 21 million. And somebody could say that is fiscally reckless, because our main sport, which is cricket, which your two brothers, Frank and Conrad, gave their lives, a country which has produced 7 cricketers at the international level, has not had a penny spent at Grove Park. But at the same time, our sister island, St. Kitts, was able to host earlier this year the CPL, and they've done that for the last 6 years or so. This year they had 33 matches. Grove Park didn't see a single match. All that we've had over the years is what's called the Premier's 11, before the big boys come into St. Kitts, a make-up team to play against a make-up team from Nevis. And that's what we've been getting. But to make matters worse, St. Kitts and Nevis was recently named as one of 4 hosts for the Under-19 ICC World Cup starting in January. Matches are going to be played not only at Warner Park, at Connery, at Molyneux, at Sandy Point, 5 grounds around St. Kitts, whereas our major sports can't get $1 in investment. Couldn't the investment put into the Mondo track, maybe keeping in line with SVG, the amount they spend? Some of it also have been spent at Grove Park, so we're not putting all the eggs in one basket.
I think somewhere during the last campaign lead up to the last election, there was a promise to do some major work to the ET
15 million.
15 million. Well, 21 million went to the, well, it's scheduled to go to the Mondo facilities, and so I guess maybe that's the combination of ET Willita and Mondo, but that's even in line with what we've seen from this government. I don't know, we don't get much accountability, we don't get much breakdown into how monies are going to be spent in development. If I can back up though, Steve, one of the things, he said, you said it rightly, you found it interesting that the project wasn't designed for that ripple effect that we all know capital projects are designed for. And I will just merge what you said and what Dr. Bartlett has said, is that what we have seen in Nevis over the years is that capital projects come in line, but is earmarked for a certain set of individuals. That same section of back-on and truck operators, that is a special group that seem to benefit, and only a certain set of individuals get from that. One of the reasons why governments all over the world invest in capital projects, in infrastructure development and management, is because they understand what those projects do for economies. It is designed to trickle down and meet the ordinary person, and so that everybody gets a small share. And once people get money, it is, we tend to spend money, and that is what they want to happen. That isn't happening here, because if Dr. Bartlett is getting half and you're getting half, you're not going to spend all of that money, so you're likely to spend just a little bit of it. And when we look at, if you look at the numbers, Dr. Bartlett can correct me, we are talking $1.3 billion investment over 8 years, and yet we are struggling through COVID.
Well, you're calling it an investment. It has been spending. It has not been necessarily investment.
You know what the argument is going to be. Blame it on COVID.
Yeah, but
we're keeping you safe.
Yeah, but if you have spent that kind of money, how is it you're struggling so bad through COVID? You have nothing in there to help you through the COVID pandemic. Nothing at all. Nothing. Had it not been for international donors and partners, we would have been in a worse position than we are now, because we had absolutely nothing in our disaster management stockpile to deal with situations like these. So $1.3 billion, nothing in your mitigation for these kind of situations. You have nothing in your social safety nets for these kind of situations. Even now you look at it, and Dr. Bartlett has said it, and I found it interesting that we have certain people in community who say nobody knew is going to sleep hungry. It is a reality. As candidates, we are meeting these individuals who are sharing those kind of stories. I meet people who say they get less than $200 a month as part of a social safety net program, and they have 3 children. One child is going to devour $150 in 2 days. That is the reality in which we live. And I've been saying time and time again that the international community has allowed and has called on governments, and that is why you would have seen many governments giving, we want to call them a stipend or stimulus check or whatever the case is. That was designed to help countries through the COVID period and to allow families to have some dignity, as Dr. Bartlett would have said, and to have some sense of livelihood, that they could pay their bills and not feel bogged down and frustrated, and they could feed their families. We haven't done anything of that sort. Anivis.
Just to add to what Rohan is saying, what we saw in the 2020 budget address, the Premier referred to it as people-centered approach to economic recovery. And these are the things that he said that they were going to do. They were going to ease up on the collection, mind you. You're not forgiving the debt that you owe for water or for electricity, but they were going to ease up. They were not going to cut you off. They delayed that for a little later. Then they would have approached the banks on behalf of the people who would have lost their jobs in hospitality, arena, to ask the banks to give them a moratorium on their loans, so they don't have to pay now. They still have to pay, mind you, they have to pay later. Plus, this is the big one, because we're so broke. We could only allocate $500,000 for education, training, skills development, and poverty alleviation, all in one. $500,000
in COVID era.
In the COVID era, and that is what the Premier dubbed as people-centered approach to economic recovery. Now, tell me that is not a joke. At first I felt insulted, and then after so I said, no, I know he's a jocular fella, so it got to be that he was making joke. So I scouched to this thing, trying to find something of merit, something to add up, because he's my cousin, and I don't like when I hear people cussing my cousin. He has said that he has done his best, and I believe him. I don't know what he did his best doing. We can't see it, we can't feel it, but he has said that he has done his best. What you gonna do? A man named Daniel used to say, when a man has done his best, you have to leave it up to the Lord to do the rest.
He used to say he can't do no more.
He has done his best, but his best is just not good enough. So people need to be alerted to the fact that he has come very close to expired. He has done his best, and he was quite, frank about it. He said, I've done my best. I've done my best. That is the best if they could do. Just spend, just tax and spend, and tax and spend, to the extent now that we even garbage now. Even garbage, we increasing the fees on garbage, just to get more money to spend. To do what? To achieve what? What are the goals? We're not seeing the goals. Set out the goals. It is so easy in this era. Almost every country in this world now has a blueprint to get into sustainable development. What we are doing is nothing sustainable, because we're not seeing what we're doing. We've been boxed into a position now that we're so broke, we can't borrow. And once you restrict the ability of a people to borrow, they cannot advance. Where are we going to get money from now? And we don't fall out with the Prime Minister. We're not going to get anything extra. So it means that we expect to go through some more hardship. And because all we have to look towards now, and I see he's already clapping that the tourist boats are back, and even though we're not making arrangement to really capitalize on, them coming back, but he's already rubbing his hands together in glee, or something is happening. But what is going to happen? It's going to get worse before it's get better, because the thing is, inflation is what is hitting us right now. Right now, worldwide, is at 30% increase on food items, and so if it was hard last week for poor people in Nevis, what is going to happen for the next couple of weeks?
It's harder every week.
You suggest it will get worse before it gets better. Well, we're at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock. Oh, how quickly time flies when you're having very important discussion about the impact on lives and livelihood. We'll go to a break, and when we come back, your calls are invited. We want to hear from you.
Your voice, Your voice with the N.R.P. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the N.R.P. candidates as they amplify your voice.
Welcome back. Pat, Doc, you talked about the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Premier. That, as far as I'm concerned, was put to bed on Sunday, May the 19th, in Tabernacle, with former Premier Van Zambreen in tow, when the Prime Minister said none of them can hold a candle of correction to me. Now, they tried to keep that relationship together because they didn't want to be a one-term administration, but it was clear to everyone that things had fallen apart. Now, last week we saw the opening of an embassy in Abu Dhabi. And our Premier has said from the day he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs that he would one day like to sit in a room, and he repeated it last week, that take a dart, throw it at a map on a wall, and that St. Kitts and Nevis would have access to every country where the dart landed. Now that travel has been eased, he went to Serbia and then Rome, but everybody knows that the United Arab Emirates is where it is. But the Prime Minister took a delegation which included Minister Hamilton, constituency 8, number 6 in St. Kitts, Ian Patches-Libert, ambassador in New York, who didn't even take the time to show up at the opening of the embassy, and I understand a couple of family members, a sister and a niece. Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who says he wants to see what's in the pot, shouldn't he been in Abu Dhabi alongside the Prime Minister, seeing about your interests? But it seems as if he likes traveling solo to places like Serbia and Rome. Shouldn't he have been on that entourage?
It's my cousin, so I was hoping that the Prime Minister would take it.
Simple answer is yes. I mean, if you're the foreign affairs minister,
but that's where the action is.
You're opening and
the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, should have been. But he said top dog.
Yeah, but I think it was a slight. Maybe it was a mutual understanding that they couldn't both be in the same place at the same time. But I understand that subsequent to that, there were other contingents to go. So maybe he's going to be going afterwards. But I don't understand why, when you have the opening of the embassy, that our top diplomat was not there.
Was not present,
and I'm hoping that it wasn't an oversight. Well, I'm hoping that it was an oversight on the Prime Minister's part, and it wasn't a slight. But that's the position he has negotiated himself into. We were told that he's a top negotiator, and we were told send me to St. Kitts, and so I would imagine that is a position that he would have, negotiated to be in.
The kingmaker made somebody else a king.
Yep.
Now it's 4 minutes past 9, and we're inviting you to call. The usual numbers: 469-1616, 469-1700. Now, in addition to the malaise, which both of you have pointed out, there is the small issue of the Alexandria Hospital. For months, press conference after press conference, they told us that work was moving apace, until recently they got to the point to say they have now figured things out. We're going to be $10 million more is going to be needed to finish that facility. Is an end in sight for the Alexandria Hospital?
Hopefully an end is in sight for the system administration. These projects seems to run like that, and I made a note. The only project I can recall that stayed on budget and on time was the one done by Surrey, the piece of road from Cotton Ground to Cliff Dwellers. Projects that are handled in-house always seem to have cost overruns and time delays, and what can one say? Is there an end in sight? I don't know, because every time we think we are getting to the point where we'll hear, well, we are getting ready to execute the final phase, and there is something else. And so we need $10 million, Doc. How much more to the debt we are going to?
Well, $10 million for what we already owe. $10 million is a job in the pocket, really. But it's not a small issue, and I know you said that, tongue in cheek. Yeah, tongue in cheek, exactly. So people need to understand the seriousness of this. We had groundbreaking in 2017, was it, for the hospital? Yeah. And then we were told that it was going to be a 48 months. No, 24 months initially. 24. It was 24 months. Then I started to hear.
Hold it there, Doc. I think we've got our first caller on the line. Good evening, caller. You're making history as the first caller on Your Voice with the N.R.P. Good evening.
I'm very glad I'm making history, my friend. Thank you. I'm listening to the program. Steve, good night. How are you?
Hi, good night. I'm well.
This is my fellow panelists. I wouldn't call the name.
Say that again?
I said, this is your cousin, Steve. We're talking about Steve Manners.
Oh, okay. Go right ahead, cousin.
Yeah. That's about it. Something there, right? That I don't really agree with. How she know that the Prime Minister and the Premier fall out? How she know that? And that's about it. You're a good accountant, right? But your calculation do not add up. All right? Have a good night, man. I listen to the show.
Okay, thank you for calling and being our first caller.
Jimmy?
Hello? Yeah, they're
gone. He's gone. I'm not an accountant, but I used to add good in school. It's one thing I was good at was adding. Anybody who knows me, who would have been in class with me, they could tell you that I was good. Yeah? I mean, this ain't no self-praise thing, You see simple maths, 1 + 2, I good.
But you said last week that,
and I have a calculator too.
You said by the caller's count, he had just come to over 100 million. So the math is no better there either.
No, it's okay for somebody to call in and say, if you're going to mark my paper, you're going to have to tell me where I went wrong. But obviously your cousin, he maybe he wants to be kind to us. And he just saying, okay. But no, I can't disclose everything that I know. The fact that the Prime Minister and the PM, that is not a big issue. I mean, people fall out all the time. And I don't want to get into that. Those kind of those kind of trench kind of things. I don't want to get into those kind of things, really. But what I'll do, though, I'll invite your cousin
to look
at the budget.
I think we've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. You're on. Hello?
Pleasant good evening. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, we're doing very well, thank you.
Okay. I just want to raise a matter pertaining to something that the Premier keeps talking about. The bouncing of the check when the Honorable Vance was Premier of this country. What you got to understand is that if you have an overdraft and you're overspending your overdraft, I'm sure each of us some one of us would have gone to the bank. You go up to the cashier, and the cashier would tell you, please hold on a minute. And when you come back, they will tell you, well, I'm sorry, no money is there. Is that correct, Tiffany?
Panelists, is that correct?
Okay. Now, with that instance, when with the money, the Prime Minister, Dr. Douglas, then offered to put finance, what you call, guarantee a loan of $5 million for the Nevis Island administration. And he said he did not want any loan. And they proceeded to write checks. And if you're writing check and you ain't got no money in your account, what else do you expect will happen? You're bound to get a bounce. I don't have any qualms with that. You must learn to be responsible and stop. You cannot have your cake and eat it. Okay?
Yeah, but caller, you've gone back a bit. Let's come forward a bit to present day. What are your thoughts of the state of the economy?
What I will say to you, right, is that you don't give a boy a big man's job to do. It's simple as that. You cannot continue every time you come, you talk about what N.R.P did, because I would say to you that many of the projects that did not come off, it is because of the same good gentleman, because he's using his law firm, and when we tried to acquire land for the development, they stopped it. The call center in Brown Hills, they blocked it. The geothermal situation. What else? So now, if nothing there, nothing just not there.
You're saying that, like David Etchcombe, the chickens are coming home to roost. My good friend David Etchcombe passed away in St. Thomas on Friday night. Thank you very much, caller. Yes, you were going to make a point?
Well, I just want to encourage the caller and the listening audience, viewing audience as well. I just want us to stay focused. You know, if I had my way, this program would have named Focus, you know. Because you find that people are going to throw all kind of distractions in the way. Now, who wants to go back to 2013? No? That is when you took over. Anything before that has already been debated. The jury came in with the verdict. Mr. Parry is out. Mr. Parry is in retirement. Leave the man alone. Focus on what is going on now. What happened in 2006 can't help us now. It's about accountability for this period of time. So don't really succumb to the argument that the N.R.P only get this or the N.R.P did that. That is a long time ago. That's a whole era ago. You know? Yeah. Let us focus on now. So don't let anybody distract you. Do not let anybody distract you. Stay focused.
That's a very strong point. Robin, you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, that is part of his strategy. His strategy. He loves to deflect and he loves to call into question the period of time N.R.P was in government, and sometimes you have to remind him as well that the progress between 2006 and 2013 far exceeds what we are seeing.
But don't entertain him.
I'm just saying, you know, that is what is going to happen with him. That is part of his plans.
But on October 29, 2017, on a Sunday to boot, and at all places, the Nevis Performing Arts Center, NEPAC, he took the baton from Premier Van Samri and he said it was Moses, who's getting old, passing it to Joshua, and he would take Nevisions to the Promised Land. Is the Promised Land close?
40 years if you want to get there. You can take them at least 40 years, and I don't think they're going to make it anyway. 40 years now.
What do you think the country needs? We're obviously in a bit of a dilemma. It's going to be blamed on COVID. We know that. They've telegraphed that. But if we're in a hole, we have to get out. What do we need to do?
We have a lot of planning to do. You know, we must examine where we're at, and that is something that I think our electorate is going to, you know, just going to have to bear with us a little bit, because I've been hearing, don't focus on what happened before. You know, just focus on what you're going to do. You know, we can't just come and talk, and, you know, we have to start, must have a reference point. So that's why we're doing this thing as methodical as we are now. We're starting to at least identify what the issues are. We recognize that overspending is one of those, wastage is one of those. We're going to have to tighten up because we don't have a lot of fiscal space left. We are max. It's like a personal, it's like you have all your credit cards and all of them at the point now that they would be declined. But for the help of the federal government and the extra fees that we collected on the garbage, you know, but we're going to have to plan our way out. For this is a period of assessment for us, and people have been asking, particularly the government, what are your plans? We're not in government.
We've got one now. Doc, so hold your point. Good evening, caller. You're on.
Good night, Steve.
Hi. Good night.
Yes. The conversation regarding the hospital. I think we need to really examine what happened, what we got, where we are now. The contract was awarded to Mr. Spencer Brand to build it, to draw and hospital, do the architectural drawings for the hospital. And it is a well-known fact that the gentleman is nowhere near qualified to be drawing such a complicated or render such a complicated architecture. And we ended up in a difficulty because those renderings were not up to speed. We must understand that the reason why the contract was issued to Mr. Brand was because he was a political candidate in St. Paul. And therefore, it is suspected that the funds generated from that contract would have financed his campaign in St. Paul's. This is the heart of why that project failed. The drawings were not up to specs, and that fact was proved by the visit recently by consultants that were brought in by the same Nevis Island government to rectify what went wrong initially. So we need to really drill down into the fact that this badly, we are in a quagmire.
We're missing you there. Oh, yeah, the last thing we heard was we're in a quagmire.
Well, we're in a quagmire because the whole project started badly. The award of the contract to Mr. Brandt was an abomination. Everybody knows that. It was rushed. There is no expertise on that side to design hospitals that are very specific in their layout. And the complaints levied by N.R.P. since then have been now proven years after, because they delayed bringing in the requisite expertise.
Mm-hmm. We've lost you again. Are you still there?
For consultants to come in here to rectify.
Another $10 million mistake? You're breaking up. We're not hearing you at the end. So we've made another $10 million mistake. Okay, we think we lost that caller. The caller said everybody knows that. We've heard the substantive Minister of Health and the Premier saying at press conferences that there was something wrong with the layout, that hospitals have to be specially configured using health speak or architectural speak to probably tell us what the caller just told us. Is that what you're hearing? Is that what you know? He says everybody knows.
Yeah, well, most people, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but hospitals, police stations, buildings of those nature require special attention and special training. I'm not going into the realm of who has and who hasn't, but it requires that special touch, because they're not regular buildings, and they must be drawn fit for purpose. And the drawing is complete in its nature, that it sets out everything from top to bottom, how it is to be built, how it is to be laid out, what floor goes onto what floor, what goes. Everything is sequential, and there is what we call a hospital management team that is involved in the not just the design, but the design, the construction, how do you outfit it. All of those things come through a hospital manager, what you call hospital. Well, I say hospital manager. I think it's a health management team. It is officially called. You know, Steve, some research would have taught me that a 500-bed hospital, from design to opening its doors, normally takes about 5 years. A 500-bed. So we are not talking about the service areas, the MRIs and the dialysis and the burn units, and you're not talking about all those other rooms. You're talking about beds. 5 years. 2017, 2021, 4 years. I don't know if Dr. Bartlett knows that. I don't know if you know how many beds the addition is going to be. But we're heading on 5 years, and I know for sure it's not a 500-bed facility we are building there. So I mean, it goes to show that failure in management and execution of a project like this. This project should have been completed within the 24-month period or the 12-month period that
24
that was first designed. But if you look
especially in a COVID environment.
Yeah. But as the years go on, the amount increases.
Is an apology owed, Pat, Doc, that the Division taxpayer will have to shell out an additional $10 million for another honest mistake?
That's easy or yours?
I think it's easy.
Well, an apology is not going to suffice. Not for me. I would not be satisfied with just an apology. I need accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I need someone to own up to the fact that it started wrong. Because my grandmother used to say, "What start wrong a morning can't come good evening." And right now what we're doing, we're throwing good money after bad. What we're doing now on the back end is what should have been done on the front end. You must do your consultation before you proceed to even making the first stroke to say you're going to draw something. You must find out, like Rohan said, it must be fit for purpose at the end of the day. It's not a dance hall you're building. So the regrettable thing for me, and I think what they should apologize for though, is for fooling people. Every year you're hearing, oh, it is on track. You know, everything is running smoothly. And in 2018 it was progressing smoothly to be completed by 2020. We're 2021. End of 2021. And no end in sight. I'm still seeing people puttering around on the outside. Even though you would have been told, well, the outside is complete, all it's waiting for now is paint.
They say substantially complete. That's the terminology.
You know, and it's just these flowery words. And I'm like, when are we going to wake up? You know, when are we as a people going to wake up and ask people to be accountable? You know, you can't be fooling people. It's not right. And I appeal to the people who are responsible to come and give an honest report, because it's about time that people got an honest report and not be every year disappointed. Every year you look at this thing and it's a vexing issue. It is becoming a vexing issue because we are saying that COVID rolled in, and with the projections that are going on in the scientific world, in the medical field, chances are we would encounter something just as bad coming on, just on the horizon. So we have to be prepared. How serious are we when every year, something is wrong, something is fundamentally wrong? By now we should have got it rectified. Whatever we had to do in 2017, after we started to build and we realized that it wasn't going where it was supposed to go, we must have accountability. And that is the problem that I have with all these flowery words, and at the end of the day, there's nothing to show for it. And then we're going to hear, but we keep getting, our margins are wider every time we win, our margins are wider. And I said to our people, 98% literacy must mean something. That is the foundation for you to start building, to get to the level of critical thinking. Nobody's supposed to fool us. And even if they fool us once, they're not supposed to fool us twice. And it's about time that the Premier came and he laid the cards on the table. Let us know. There's nothing wrong with a man saying we messed up. We messed up, we ask for forgiveness, we put the remedial actions in place, and we get it done. But we can't continue like this. COVID came through and people were dying in their homes. I'm not saying they were dying because of COVID, but people were not going to the hospital. You know how many people died at home? That is an oddity in our society, because most of the times your fingernails start hurting you rush to the hospital. But with the COVID restriction in place, you couldn't do that. There was no latitude for anything outside of an emergency going into the hospital. And so people were told, I didn't feel so good. And you were told, stay home. Mm-hmm. You stayed home and you died. And then I've heard, because one night I passed a particular area on my way to Vaughan. And by the time I was going back, the ambulance, the hearse was there to pick up a lady who didn't feel good that evening. And she ended up succumbing at home. And that is what not being prepared. Those are the things that would happen if you're in a society that is not being prepared. Our health system is not up to par, irrespective of what is being said. We should have spent, of all this money that we would have spent over the last 7 years, almost $1 billion. We should have been having a health system that could at least be able to exist with two different activities going on at the same time. Because COVID really, it really paralyzed us to the extent that we couldn't do anything else, it seems. We couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. And we should have been better prepared. Even in St. Kitts, you have at least a major hospital, and you have another hospital that you could use. Over here, we were told that there was some house, someplace that was equipped, to handle the COVID, overflow. But it was never really called into action. But it just showed that we were not prepared. And with all this money that has been spent, with the debt climbing as high as it is, and only 12,000 of us here to pay for it, Only 12,000 of us, and maybe not even 12,000 of us, because not everybody is a permanent resident, So it means that closer to 11,000 of us have to pay for that debt. It means that we're already indebted to more than $50,000 each. You and I can afford to take on that?
Yeah,
and we can't see the reflection in a good healthcare system. We can't see a reflection in us being prepared, to phase out fossil fuels. We're still buying diesel generator. We have not done anything for renewable energy. All the SDGs, and I think I've started, and we've gotten distracted, but I started to make reference to the SDGs that all the countries of the world, they are proceeding along that line, because there's some set sustainable development goals that once we set those as our target, then we feel comfortable as we start ticking them off. Hunger, we shouldn't have hunger in St. Kitts Nevis. Well, let me talk about Nevis. We have to be, concentrate on Nevis. I'm a little parochial, yes, but I have to concentrate on Nevis. But we shouldn't have poverty at the level that we have it in Nevis. Those are poverty and hunger. Those are two of the main, the first two, as a matter of fact, sustainable development goals that we have to attain. We are not close to achieving that. And those are just the low-hanging fruits. Those are the low-hanging fruits, because all this money that we've spent, nobody should have. If you give me $50,000, I would have spent it wisely.
Your call has been a clarion one for accountability. The Minister of Finance have 3 lovely nights, days and nights coming up where he can answer some of these questions. Of course, there's tomorrow night, as he did last week and called in. Then there's Wednesday night. And then after last Monday, after we pointed out that he hadn't had a press conference, October's press conference is coming at the end of November. He's coming to talk to the people on Thursday. So you post your questions. Let's hope we get some answers in the coming days. We're heading down to 9:30. You're listening to Your Voice in the Community. Your Voice with the N.R.P. We've just got about 32 minutes or so. We'll take a break. When we come back, we definitely want to hear from you. This is your program. Call is 469-1616, 469-1700. Now, most countries are trying to put in place a recovery plan. We've been through COVID, it has hit us hard. We didn't plan ahead. We didn't put rainy funds in place. Have you heard any talk about a recovery plan for Nevis?
Well, I haven't. Before I speak on the recovery plan, I want to back up a little bit to, Dr. Bartlett speaking about our health services. And what I found is that our leaders presently are not forward thinkers. And so we are always trying to catch up with our advances in our island. For example, Dr. Bartlett would have accurately pointed out that in St. Kitts there is a feeder facility to the JNF hospital. I think there are 2 of them, Poxon and Mary Charles. Mm-hmm. And if we were thinking broadly, we would have thought to develop our community health centers and look at the 2 largest areas outside of Charlestown and I will stick with Gingerland in this instance. And if we had used some of the funds, or earmarked some of the funds, or thought about putting in Gingerland what I have termed the Health and Human Services Complex, which would house a modern medical facility, large enough to take some of the burden off of our mainstay hospital. And so we are people, as Dr. Bartlett was saying, were not going to the hospitals. If they had little injuries, or we could have shifted it around and used the one in Gingerland as the COVID facility and allow the hospital to operate as normal. Or if they were developed to a point where we can give community health centers more responsibility. Because from what we're understanding, these centers, or the nurses in these centers, are trained to provide more services. And so we need to begin to look at developing our community health centers to the point that we can now use them as feeder institutions and take some of that burden off of our main facility. Go to Cotton Ground and get your dressings, and we promote those kind of things, your antenatal clinics and so on. And here's what it does to Mr. Manners. It opens an opportunity for employment. Because if you have better community facilities and you can gear the school leavers to that field, you say, listen, this is where the job is at. This is where the opportunities are. And we provide proper remuneration and incentive packages. Because I have found that even when we talk about not being able to pay civil servants what they should get, we're still not trying to provide other incentives that could close the gap between what they're getting and what they should get. And so if we begin to look at developing all centers, Cotton Ground Health Center is in the community center. That shouldn't be, not as we are looking to achieve sustainable development goals. Gingerland is the same thing. And it is critical now, as Dr. Bartlett would have said, that we are on our way to face, and I hope that isn't the case, a similar health issue to COVID-19. These are the things we really should be thinking about. How do we maximize our resources and our potential to face these challenges, and to do so effectively so that our people are not burdened, and our people are not frustrated, and our people are not afraid to go to the hospital, or restricted from going to the hospital in that case. All of this is a part of the health service structure that has to be properly and effectively managed. When we talk about a recovery plan, early in 2002, leading financial institutions laid the groundwork on how to survive the pandemic and give your country or your island the best shot of coming out of the pandemic. And what they were saying is, listen, education and providing family subsistence are going to be two of the main ways you're going to survive the pandemic in a way that allows you to come out of the pandemic strong enough. We saw Jamaica doing it, we saw Barbados doing it, we saw Grenada doing it, where they invested in innovation and technology. Along with education, they were getting people to go to train, whether they were doing it online or they were physically going. We weren't doing that. You're talking about news. We did nothing except to say that they said whatever happens good in St. Kitts is happening in Nevis. And so, as Dr. Bartlett would have said earlier, and I've said, and I've coined the phrase that our economic philosophy is Dr. Timothy Harris.
Our economic philosophy?
Nevis's economic philosophy is Dr. Timothy Harris.
Why do you say that?
Had it not been for Dr. Timothy Harris and his goodness,
no, I wouldn't.
We would have been in trouble with that. You don't have to agree with it, but when you look at the stimulus package, where did that come from?
But it's our money, it's our passport.
Yeah, it's our money, but had it not been so, is in the same context, you could have said, well, the stimulus package, as we would have seen, the second one is generally geared to St. Kitts. So I am saying that it was the, listen, I'm not playing politics with this. I am simply saying he's the one who would have place the first stimulus package across the board so everybody can benefit. I'm simply saying Nevis did nothing
On its own,
on its own
as a separate entity.
as a small island developing state which was clearly laid out in the international financial circle.
But Rohan, can I just add, because I think I would have made a note of it earlier. We got the same message that everybody has got.
Yeah.
What did we do? To that we said we're going to just put a measly $500,000, not even $1 million, you know, and that was going towards all the elements that she just outlined. That was going towards education, going towards skills development, going towards poverty alleviation. Where other people got the message, interpreted it differently, but you know what our problem was? We were cash strapped. At that point, we had no financial leverage left. We had maxed out,
But
that is the box in which we are now.
Well, you know, Doc, even in that case, international agencies, financial IMF and the World Bank were saying, listen, there are grants available and there are soft loans available. We went to Trinidad to get some money for our cell engine, didn't we?
That's what
But yet we allowed our human capital to struggle unnecessarily through a COVID-19 pandemic. Had we sought to access some of these grants and these soft loans, we could have helped struggling single home families. We could have helped young women who have 200 children and were unemployed, or being mindful that the unemployment issue was long before COVID. COVID simply removed the mask and highlighted the deficiencies in government's ability to create employment.
So both of you are saying that lack of forward planning is at the core of our dilemma.
We're not planning. We have not been planning. We have just been winging it. You know, when you look at the budget addresses, you know, and I've scoured through them, you know, they're just empty. You know, and we see no plan in place. We see no objectives. We see no goals. We can't even tick off, because once you, and that is something, when you plan, you say, okay, I'm going to achieve this by this time. But there isn't anything. All we're seeing, just like I keep saying, flowery words, you know, things that look, you know, and they keep repeating. Every year, it's the same thing you're seeing. You know, just because, and I keep going back to the word accountability, just because people are not held accountable. But we need to sit down and have a plan. I've already been, every time I get an opportunity on radio to talk about planning, I keep suggesting to the government, get some economic council in place. People who know
That should have
how this thing work.
That should have been.
You know, it is true that around here in politics, we sometimes end up electing people who may not have had any exposure in government. We are lucky in N.R.P. now that we have, you know, quite a slate of candidates who would have had, you know, exposure, you know, on different levels, you know, and involvement of that kind. People who can write projects, people who understand the dynamics, you know, and we have that, you know. But having recognized you have the deficiencies, plug that hole, you know, find an economic council. And, you know, I've seen reference to it, because obviously they listen, and that is, they keep asking, what are your ideas? What are your ideas? Give us your ideas so we can, you know, look pretty and stay in, you know, position. And they get these ideas, they document them, and then they don't move on them, because it takes more than just copy and paste. And that is what they have not been able to do, you know, to at least implement. You get these ideas and visions, and we have a lot of bright people in Nevis, you know. And we have even brighter people outside, you know, I mean, PhDs and, you know, people at that level that we have outside in the diaspora, and we're just not tapping into that resource, and it is our resource, you know. We just have to find it, and it's about time we got an economic council in place and start moving forward. But we have not, we've always, you just hear talk, and nothing is done, and it's regrettable.
You're right, you know, Doug, that whether they want to call it an economic council or recovery council, that should have been instituted around the same time we instituted the task force. Because you should have known, and had to have known, that at some point in time, it would be needed to help us in the transition out of the COVID era. That isn't the answer, as Dr. Batt is saying. We are continually winging it, despite all the free advice that is given in the international community. You know, Mr. Manners, one of the things I found interesting, and I think we ought to understand, that out of this pandemic, good things are going to happen, and has been happening, because major countries are going to recover and grow at record rates. It is said that the USA is going to grow at 7%, never seen before. Australia is going to grow somewhere around 5%. England is going to grow. You know what? You know who's not going to grow at that rate? Small and developing states. So it's a tale of two growth. The larger countries are going to grow fast and well. The smaller countries are going to struggle. And so that is going to happen. And so we are at a deficit because we don't have any economic recovery council. There's no real plan to get us out of COVID. So even accept the wait and see approach, as Dr. Barrett said, we see the handicraft of the ships returning. But what is the plan to get us from where we are to where we want to go? Here is what is happening around the world, and recently came out of COP26, and Barbados has already taken point on that. It's what they call the blue economy. The sustainability and the viability of the blue economy, and we are seeing a marrying of the blue-green economy that allows us to be creative in diversifying the economy to a point where we can say, well, in 2 years this is what we hope to achieve. In 4 years that is what we hope, because we are actually, as Dr. Bartlett said, being deliberate in planning what our next move is going to be.
And have targets.
And have targets to make sure that we are achieving as many of the SDGs that we can, because that is the human index that is required in moving a small island like ours out of COVID-19. And we can't just sit back and say, well, projections for 2022 in tourism looks good. That isn't going to do. That is not good enough.
Well, I'll tell you what the next big projection is. I mentioned it last week and I'll mention it again. All the planning is going towards Sunday, December 19th, the opening of the Pinnis Park. We're all invited to come down. There's a lovely, the children are going to enjoy the playground. The adults, we're going to show movies for 3 nights on the amphitheater, clearly designed to give the people a good feel. Other than the Christmas tree lightings, I see the one in Charlestown is getting set. That's the only thing on the horizon for the rest of the year, as they look to jump off that for an election in the first quarter of 2022. Is the Pinnis Park a rung on the economic ladder back to sustainability?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know that it is. I mean, you have the Pinnis Park. We are still yet to know how many jobs are available at the Pinnis Park. What are the?
Well, I did see a report from the permanent secretary in a few weeks ago, and there are many people applying for the jobs there.
There are many people applying.
Mind you, there are many people in the hotel industry who have not gone back to work. Brown Hill Communication, we can't find a replacement. Nisbet Plantation Inn is closed. So people are looking for work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, many people applying still doesn't tell us how many jobs. You're just saying many people applying. Many people applying for how many? How many of those jobs are long term for divisions, and what percentage does it account for the unemployment rate? I don't know. It's a wrong in economic ladder to recovery. What I do know, it is a boost of parties' desire to have a successful election cycle. What I am hoping is that people are going to understand and see beyond what is happening. I have no qualms with the Pinnis Park, of course. It is a benefit of our relationship with the people of Republic of China and Taiwan. Young people can benefit from the recreation facilities. But for me, Mr. Manners, I deem that as, I can't even say that it is his signature achievement, because not much of it is in vision in terms of what we have input in that. I pass the daily, and of course you see the host of Taiwanese who work there on a regular. I know when they started I used to see quite a bit of locals there, but when you get down to the latter part and the nitty-gritties of it, I don't see much locals there. But that is just the pin is back. That is all. I'm still looking for that one thing that is going to say, yes, this is the opportunity for scores of divisions or hundreds of divisions to return to work on a long-term basis, an opportunity to provide sustainable prosperity for themselves and their family. I don't see the business doing that.
Doc, you once ran an amusement center, and of course you run another facility. Is this the next big thing on the horizon? You laugh.
Well, for this government, it sure is something to celebrate because they have not really been doing much of anything else. So thanks to the Taiwanese, I don't see this as a sustainable enterprise, really. A self-sustaining, sustainable enterprise. Government gonna have to, unless the Taiwanese have in place, a maintenance budget for it, it means that it would soon get onto the list of things that we have to maintain with very little returns on it, because we have seen similar facility right around the corner, going into Charlestown, and we see where that led, because after the novelty of it wears off, the visions would have been there, done that, and unless it is that you're going to have a big band on a regular basis, for people to rub out the grass, I don't see it making the kind of money to maintain it to the level as it relates to the aesthetics that I know the Taiwanese are good for. I think they're going to at least deliver to us a good product. I think it's going to be something that we really would be all impressed by, but my beef is the maintenance after, and I think it's going to fall on us to maintain it, just like the Mondo track, with very little returns for us on it. But I'm hoping that it is a start, something, we desperately need, and putting parties aside, Nevis needs to start doing better. Because our people are struggling, and so every little bit right now, anybody who's out there, I remember there was a place that opened over in Barnscott, and the Premier was telling all of the people who worked at Brownell Communications to go ahead and put in the application, knowing full well, that is only a handful of people you can absorb, and so there's no serious thought put into what are we going to do for the other people, and we need to start thinking about that. And I don't even mind sitting in a room with the Premier and coming up with ideas at this stage, because we desperately need something to happen for Nevis. Prosperity in St. Kitts, irrespective of what the Premier would have said, is not prosperity in Nevis.
We need our own prosperity.
We do.
12 minutes is all we've got, and that will take us to the top of the hour, 10 o'clock. That's all the time you've got to call us to share your ideas, share your views, ask a question of the two N.R.P. candidates we've got in the room. Dr. Patricia Bartlett for constituency number 2, St. John's, and Rohan Isles for constituency number 3, Gingerland. Now, panelists, December is going to be a very big month. And if what has been promised come to reality, we may turn the corner. December is the deadline given to the people working on geothermal to either come up with the money or hit the road. It is also the month when the people for the one and only hotel in Indian Castle must come up with the money or else hit the road. Now, Indian Castle is one of my favorite places on Nevis. I absolutely like that area. But what I've seen there over the last year or so, it's a dumping station. Doesn't signal that a 5-4-star, whatever sort of hotel is coming anytime soon. So geothermal, one and only. How close are we? Or how far are we? Are we going to see those two big projects become a reality, which will help us to turn the corner to sustainability?
I can't. That's not a question I can answer, how close we are, how far we are. I'm going to say wait on the skipper. I think the skipper is the one who has the answers to those. I know he said man can only plan, but God does the rest, or something like that. For geothermal, I think we have seen what the answer is to that particular question. We saw the slow crawl of that Watsilla mega structure that went to the power plant, and that should give a clear indication as to the state of geothermal. I know he said he was going to flip the switch. What I've seen is that he has now begun to unplug a lot of things. And so the geothermal, and I think he unplugged that the day he decided to write against N.R.P's proposal for geothermal. I think we're all familiar with the situation that arose and the response he decided to take, and in a sense CAM has returned favor for his actions. But in terms of the one and only, it would be nice, Mr. Manners, in reality it would be nice if that was to come to fruition and the people of Gingerland can find employment in Gingerland.
The whole of Nevis.
Yeah.
And St. Kitts too.
Well, still.
Prosperity in Nevis is prosperity in St. Kitts.
If that is the case, but I'm not sure that this Christmas is going to bring that kind of bounty to the people of Nevis, unfortunately.
We'll wait on the skipper.
Doc,
Indian Castle at one time, one of the thriving agricultural estates on Nevis, has become a bit of a wasteland, a bit of a dump. Are you hopeful that we will see the one and only?
That's funny. We're not likely to see neither one and only or two and only. We're not likely to see anything going on there. That is just talk. We keep hearing about these budget after budget. We keep hearing people are getting ultimatum. I mean, we're just not serious. I mean, I don't know how aggressively we're pursuing external sources for funding for projects on Nevis. But I say we have a population of Nevisians in the diaspora. We need to start tapping into these people. We need to start creating projects that people can get a stake in it. We shouldn't be sitting on and waiting on the Chinese or the Asians or waiting on the Americans or the Europeans to build Nevis. We need to start involving our people in our development. We need to come up with these projects that we could say, look guys, you can have a share in this. And I think that I would have heard the political party that dropped out, they would have proposed at some point, that as it relates to geothermal, that they would involve the population and, it would be owned by individuals, which was a good idea. The concept was a good one, and that is where I think we need to move to in terms of our development, because every developer who comes here, they must see the potential, for good returns on their monies, and all over. Everybody putting their assets, putting everything into tourism. It's a competitive market, very tight, And I don't know why we think that Nevis is so special. And mind you, Nevis is special, But as it relates to what we have to offer, ease of doing business, airlift into Nevis, I hear the Premier trying to justify nothing going on at the Van Samuel, those kind of things. We have not paid attention to anything. We've just let everything run down. So under this present administration, it is not likely that we're going to see any one and only, any two and only, any three all only. We're not likely to see any of those numbers. Windham, we're not going to see that. We're not going to see any of the things that keep popping up in the only place we're going to see these things in the budget address.
So you're looking forward to that?
The budget address. I'm looking forward to it because I really need to know how indebted I am now, because with my debts, and I have debts that they have taken on my back, that I have to pay for as well, I need to know how deep I am in this thing, because at the end of the day, I think there was a singer who said, those who can afford to run would run. The question remains, what about those who can't afford to run? What's going to happen to them? And that is what I agonize over. What is going to happen to the average poor Nevisian, on whose backs all these loans are taken, and they will have to pay it back. They themselves are not even being offered any way out of the position that they're in now, the poverty that we're in now. There is no way that is being created for them to get out, and it is not fair, And so I am not optimistic that any of those things are going to happen, because they haven't happened in 10 years. Geothermal, the Premier boasts that they're the ones who came up with the original idea, and good. You know, he can take credit for that. 2004, he says, is the first time. We're almost in 2024, nearly 20 years. And you offered me this people, geothermal, my new fossil fuel, becoming so expensive, you know? And up to this day, 20 years later, you're telling me, even if you didn't at least provide people with geothermal, not even a little blade, you didn't even add a little blade to the system. Yeah? The couple that were over Maddens, they're going on one by one. You know, all these housing, you hear them talk about housing revolution. When we hear revolution, we think, okay, they're building smart houses, you know. Yeah. You don't have to pay for, to heat your water, and those kind of things, because you get, at least you get a photo cell or whatever. Yeah. Something to ease the burden. And you call it a revolution because you build tree house in Hamilton or tree house in Craddock and 4 in Hamilton. What kind of revolution is that, We need to start getting serious about what we are promising our people and what we are delivering.
I can't let you go without asking an agricultural question. When COVID hit in March 2020, our government, like governments around the region, when they realized that the food chain could be broken, was broken, they said that if it's one lesson learned, that we've got to learn to feed ourselves. How are we doing in that regard?
Well, we'll wait for the reports because the way that they go about accounting for things is like if the boat didn't bring it, then it means that we have produced it. That used to be the rationale. We look at the imports to determine what our production level is. And I just couldn't understand that, how people could have bought into that. It is true that we had a flurry of activity as it relates to everyone wanting to plant something. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, if everybody planting the same thing at the same time, and then afterwards we had, the challenges with the weather. And so I'm not so sure how well we would have done. I'm not so sure if the $10 million that they claim that they put into it, or whatever number, millions of dollars they put into it, if maybe it might not have been better spent targeting some, producers, for some specific crops, and government undertake to, taking the crops from the people, like a contract farming kind of thing. Yep. And I think we have not really done anything, innovative like that. Well, innovative to us, but contract farming, I think, is the way to go. Or else, the dilemma that the farmers face is that they produce, and sometimes without any checks and balances in the system, and people end up with wastage. Mm-hmm. And then they're not encouraged, to participate for much longer. So it's not sustainable. The agriculture we're doing is just reactive. Because of the COVID, people would have planted some things. Of course, some people got some relief, and I would have, gotten a few provisions from 1 or 2 people, but as to sustainability, I don't think that what we would have created is anything sustainable. We didn't build on it. We didn't build anything that we can go forward on, because the basic fundamental way of going about it, I don't think was well thought out.
We've got 2 minutes to 10. Rowan Isles, you've got 1, and then we'll give the other minute to Dr. Patricia Bartlett to close it out.
Thank you, Steve. Just to add on to what Dr. Bartlett said about agriculture, I thought we missed a trick in agro-processing. I think we could have done a little bit more in that, invest in that. It's an opportunity for some young people to get into agro-processing, a means of providing for themselves and their family. It would account for some of the wastage that Dr. Bartlett was talking about. And so that is something I think we ought to look at as well. And I think that was the intention too, that you at agro-processing, you train people in that field, and then allow them to go out and to build on their business. I want to end by saying it was good to be here. My first shot at your voice with the N.R.P. And nothing changes until we change, and I hope that we are heading for that change.
Doc, you've got to give the people of Nevis some hope.
Well, I am hopeful. I'm optimistic that things will change over, but it's going to take time. People just need to have to stick with one another. You have to, take care of your family. Extended family. We all have to band together on this one. Don't expect government is going to bring results. At least not this present administration. They seem not to have any concern about the plight of the average division. So there is hope, because every day you wake up, there is hope. Mm-hmm. But we just have to get people in place who can plan properly. and who recognize the needs of the people and who would work on behalf of the people. And I think that we stand ready to do that. We just need to be given the opportunity to do that. I'm not pleased that we do not have more calls tonight, because I know people are listening, and I know, of course, a lot of people sometimes don't want to participate because they hear with the N.R.P and know that government is listening. and it is a sorry day that we get to the stage that people can't express themselves, because I know people would going to call me when I get home, I'm on my phone, and tell me the things that they would have liked to share, But I want people to try and get over that fear, and at least use this forum to express the things that you're going through, because people need to hear from your experiences, because maybe people, especially people in the diaspora who are not living here, they don't seem to have a keen understanding as to what we're going through. And I think that they need to hear from just us in the N.R.P. They need to hear your voices, and that's what the program is named, Your Voice with the N.R.P. So I encourage people to, in our subsequent programs, to call in and hear your views. Be respectful about it, but please, I encourage you to call. And so next year when we take over, I can assure you that things will be much better.
In a democracy, you must speak up, says Big Rowan Isles. On a Thursday evening, Rowan Isles and J.D. Keynes will be here in the studio to bring their views to you. You've been listening to the second edition of Your Voice with the N.R.P. We'll be back next week when we'll have two panelists in studio. And as Dr. Bartlett has said, we want to hear from you. Good night.
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the N.R.P. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the N.R.P. candidates as they amplify your voice.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
You're listening to Vaughn Radio from the Federation of St. Kitts Nevis. With all the